Hey people, welcome to the Run Testers. Now if you're looking for a max cushion daily trainer with a bit of up-pace bite, the On Cloudmonster Hyper and the On Cloudeclipse might drift onto your radar. The former takes On's regular Cloudmonster line and hypes it up to super trainer status with a hybrid wedge of PEBA embedded in the familiar CloudTec. Meanwhile, the On Cloudeclipse offers a firmer, more responsive rockered ride that uses On's CloudTec phase domino-effect midsole setup here to deliver a cushioned but peppy performance. So which one of these is best? We'll watch on for our On Cloudmonster Hyper versus On Cloudeclipse head-to-head review. Some details then with the On Cloudmonster Hyper midsole stack comes in marginally higher with 37.5mm in the heel, 31.5mm in the forefoot. The Cloudeclipse stack drops in at 37mm in the heel, 31 in the forefoot, with both shoes boasting a 6mm drop. The On Cloudmonster Hyper weighs in at 9.1 ounces or 258 grams at a UK men's 8.5. That's slightly lighter than the Cloudeclipse, which comes in at the same weight as the old Cloudmonster 2 at 10.5 ounces or 297 grams. When it comes to price, there's a sizable difference here too. At $220 or £210, the On Cloudmonster Hyper packs a princely super shoe price tag. That's up there with the Asics Super Blast. It's also the best part of $40 or £40 pricier than the Cloudeclipse, which comes in at $179.99 or £170 in the UK. Let's give you a quick shoe comparison. Well, the On Cloudmonster Hyper drops in as the biggest stack shoe in On's lineup. It packs a wedge of high energy PEBA and an EVA CloudTec foam cradle. For a so-called super trainer, it's a bit surprising there's no plate, not even one of those nylon speedboards that you find in On's shoes. The On Cloudeclipse has a similarly big wedge of midsole foam with On's CloudTec phase setup that we first saw in the On Cloud Surfer. Those cloud elements here collapse in sequence a bit like dominoes and then release as we roll through to create a smoother transition and add a bit of energy. There is a speedboard plate towards the bottom of the midsole unit to provide some stiffness to those foam elements, along with a more aggressive forefoot rocker here. That makes for a firmer, more responsive ride compared to the softer feel of the On Cloudmonster Hyper, which relies much more on the resilience of the foam, the bounce back, to provide the energy here. Up top, the On Cloudmonster Hyper has excellent engineered woven uppers, while the Cloudeclipse has dual layered mesh uppers. There's good flex in both for ample wiggle room into the toe box. The heel collars offer similar levels of padding, and there's a small external heel clip here on the On Cloudeclipse for a bit of extra security. The tongues on both shoes are nicely thin and foot wrapping. The lacing is a little bit different though. On the On Cloudeclipse there's a lower section that cinches right behind the toes for a bit more security, while the On Cloudmonster Hyper uses these kind of rubberized laces, and those lock tight and they don't come loose. Flip them over and the On Cloudeclipse has more outsole rubber, particularly in the heel area. That's good news if you're a heel striker. The On Cloudmonster Hyper sticks with On's familiar reinforcements that come on top of those kind of cloud element pads. And those here already are showing a little bit signs of wearing kind of faster than the On Cloudeclipse. In both shoes, On's trademark stone catching channels have largely been eliminated, though the On Cloudmonster Hyper has a channel towards the heel that still might pick up some bits and pieces. So have a quick word on fit then. As you can see, I've got a good thumbs width clearance up the top of the toe box at the end here. There's good clearance across the top of the toes as well, and this kind of loose uppers as well. They're nice and kind of roomy. You can wiggle a lot. There's plenty of flex here, so loads of room to breathe. When you come back into the midfoot, they hold really nicely without pinching across this sort of toe knuckle section. That's not too tight. It's just nice and secure and firm. Same goes all the way back up across the top of the midfoot. Good lace lock down. Nice kind of thin wrapping tongues that just take the edge off, but sit really nicely. They don't move around or do anything crazy. And then back into the heel collars, you've got these medium padded heel collars that just hold nice and secure. There's not the most structure to the heel collar here. There's not much of a counter until you get down the bottom here. So there's a bit of flex there. If you need a bit more structure there, maybe you want to check that out in other shoes. And then when you get into the On Cloud Hyper, there is more room here towards the end of the toe box, and again you've got nice flexible uppers, plenty of wiggle room. There's more volume here, I would say, overall. So if you like it really nice and roomy, this one is going to do slightly better than the Cloudeclipse. Back into this area here, you can see there's a bit of bulging on my toe knuckle here, but again, similar kind of lockdown, similar tightness. Laces do really well. Everything's really solid there. And then when you come back up, you've got the tongues, they fit a bit higher, but they're nice and flexible, so it doesn't really make too much difference. take the edge off again, into the heel collars. Again, medium padded heel collars. Same amount of flex really overall as you've got in the On Cloudeclipse. So not much to choose here. It's maybe a little less secure overall in the heels on the fit. But when you talk about both these shoes, I would recommend going true to size, which is what I ran in a UK 8.5.
When it comes to the fit of the two shoes, both of these shoes have fit me really well in my normal size. I've got a UK 9 with both, which is a US 9.5. Got a good amount of room in the toe box, nice secure hold around the heel and midfoot without any rubbing or Achilles irritation or anything like that. So I was very happy with both shoes in my normal running shoe size.
So in terms of fit, I've got both these shoes in a UK size 8. That is my typical running shoe size. Typically the shoe size that works best for me in On shoes in general. I would say the experience of these two shoes, I would say based on my feet, going true to size has been absolutely fine. I think maybe the Cloudmonster Hyper is a touch more roomy and accommodating, but I don't think there's a huge amount in it. I think that's mostly felt at the kind of in the toe box and around the toes, I think, where you maybe are getting a touch more space, but I don't think there's a huge amount in it. I think I've been happy with the amount of space in the Cloudeclipse. When you go further back in the shoe, the midfoot hold feels very similar to me. I think you go back into the heel collar, maybe you're getting similar level of padding there as well too. You're getting maybe a slightly more narrow kind of heel collar on the Cloudmonster Hyper to maybe kind of lock things in a little bit more, but I don't think, as again, I think there's a huge amount in it. Lockdown, things like that, heel rub, no kind of major issues. So I think going true to size in both these shoes should be fine. I would say the Cloudmonster Hyper maybe is a touch more roomy, but I don't think it's a huge amount in it.
Now in testing, I've clocked more than 40 miles in the Cloudeclipse and close to 100 miles in the On Cloudmonster Hyper. That's all at a mix of paces on road and light off-roads. I also recently ran the 55-mile Comrades Marathon in the On Cloudmonster Hyper. That was a thorough 9-hour run test of this shoe's comfort, energy and cushioning. Now, there's a decent step in comfort in both of these shoes, and if you put the price aside for a second and focus on the ride and comfort, they both deliver a lot of what you want from a good daily trainer. The On Cloudeclipse has got a Cloud Surfer Cloudmonster hybrid design, provides cushion and protection while being surprisingly nippy and versatile. The well-cushioned stack avoids feeling over-egged. It's almost got that easy rolling rockered ride of the original Cloudmonster, but with some of the compact precision and agility that you'll find on an On Cloud Surfer. It works really nicely. The Cloudmonster Hyper is a bit harder to pin down. In the Cloudmonster Hyper review, I noted that I wasn't entirely sold on this shoe. It's a happy cruising shoe that provides good cushion protection with some liveliness underfoot, but it's not overly aggressive. It's also not packing enough punch, I don't think, at least not what you'd expect for a high-ticket so-called super trainer. At times, the elements in the midsole can feel slightly disconnected because you've got this kind of separate wedge of PEBA in the forefoot, and I found I had to run the shoe in for each run. The On Cloudeclipse is much smoother straight out of the blocks. However, having used the On Cloudmonster Hyper to run 55 miles in roughly 9 hours at an easy-ish pace, it impressed me a lot for that as a road ultra shoe. It served up just the right balance of cushion and energy for that kind of effort as a roomy road ultra shoe or an easy day cushion shoe. It's definitely got good credentials and offers more protection underfoot than you'd get from the On Cloudeclipse. Thing is, I'm just not sure it has the same top-end agility that you'll get from the Cloudeclipse. And if I was out to run a tempo run or hitting half marathon pace, I'd definitely choose the On Cloudeclipse first. If I wanted guaranteed happy cushion feet over 2 hours or more, I'd probably choose the Hyper.
When it comes to the run test, I've done a lot of running in both of these shoes, using them mainly for kind of picking up easy runs, recovery runs, long runs, just in high mileage weeks, just churning out a lot of miles, and then the odd slightly faster thing. I did a mini session in the Cloudeclipse running mile reps and a couple of shorter reps, and then in the Cloudmonster Hyper I've done some progression runs and some just faster stuff within easier runs. And for me it's pretty clear which shoe I prefer running in. It is the Cloudeclipse. We had this shoe in first of the pair, and it has on CloudTec phase midsole. Like, this isn't the most incredible foam in the world in terms of the bounce or the feel underfoot, but the rocker design is really good on this shoe, and also the Cloud Surfer, which has the same kind of rocker design. Find it delivers a very smooth ride for me. You can turn your feet over quite nicely, and it actually gives the shoe quite a lot of versatility because it is a pretty high stack of a comfortable enough foam for easy runs when you are ticking along, and it does move through the gears quite well, I think, because you are getting tipped forward nicely. You've got really quite a good turnover from the shoe with the rocker here. As a high cadence runner, I like the high turnover you get from a rocket shoe like this, and it did mean I could pick up the pace in it okay. It's not the lightest shoe in the world, and it's not the most versatile shoe. It's better as a cushion shoe for long runs and easy runs, I think, but it does have a reasonably versatile ride and an enjoyable one. Like, I like turning my feet over in this shoe. I think it's fun to run in, and I like the rocker sensation you get. Didn't really have a lot of fun when I was running in the Cloudmonster Hyper. I just find it's quite a blocky ride, quite a firm ride. Like, the CloudTec pods at the back of the shoe really dominate the feel of the shoe. So these are heavier, harder, less bouncy than the PEBA section you have under the forefoot, and they really dominate the feel of the ride. Like I said, it feels quite a bottom heavy shoe. It feels quite firm and just not that exciting, especially landing as I do as a heel striker. Even if I am moving faster, landing more midfoot or landing on this PEBA chunk, it's still not the most explosive foam here, because it is still, I think, undermined by all the CloudTec it has underneath it and around it, which gives more weight to the shoe and also kind of mutes the impact of the bouncier foam here. So I did find it was a shoe that improved over the course of a run. Like, it did start very clunky in lots of runs, but if I ran, once I was getting past kind of 10k, it started to feel a little bit better, but it still didn't feel fantastic. It hasn't really got that smoothness, the rocker you have on the Cloudeclipse. It's a more traditional ride, more of a snap through, and like I say, it can feel quite clunky because you don't get a very smooth transition from the CloudTec onto the PEBA foam here, and you don't really get much versatility, despite the fact it's marketed with Hyper in the name. There's a PEBA foam in there. It's it's a daily trainer that can do a bit of everything. It's still quite a weighty shoe. It's not got a very fast transition, I found, and it doesn't really give you much of an explosive feeling to running at pace. So yeah, it wasn't a shoe I really enjoyed that much. Like, I didn't mind like ticking off an hour here, an hour there, a long run here. Like, it does that okay. It will eat up mileage quite well, but for the price you're paying for the shoe in particular, I just don't think it does enough. The Cloudeclipse is a much more enjoyable shoe to pick up every day. Certainly a shoe I'd look forward to running in more than I did the Cloudmonster Hyper. I still wouldn't say it's a shoe that absolutely wowed me, but I did enjoy it, and I did like doing long runs in it and that kind of thing. So yeah, the run test was more enjoyable for me in the Cloudeclipse.
So in terms of that run test now, beyond the running we've done for our multi-test reviews, I've spent more time in the On Cloudeclipse, but I'll start by saying that these are obviously two shoes designed for the same types of runs. They're kind of big cushion shoes that are designed to protect, give you kind of comfort and control over those kind of longer runs, recovery runs, easy runs. But I do think there's some differences which may alter or influence the types of runs that actually they may work for outside of those runs. Now, first I'll talk about is weight. Now, this is actually the heavier of the two shoes, but I do find that I notice the weight a little bit more on the shoe compared to the On Cloudeclipse. I feel that's, testament to On really distributing that kind of weight across the shoe and making sure it doesn't feel like a heavy kind of big cushion daily trainer to run in. Now, obviously we're getting different cushioning technologies here. This is more in keeping with the On of old, so slightly firmer, putting a lot of cushioning, in between you and, what you're running on. And then with this, you are getting the kind of newer midsole tech that we're seeing in the Cloud Surfer in here as well too. That is slightly softer, more forgiving on your feet, compresses a little bit more. It still has those kind of CloudTec pods, but they're slightly angled and just collapse a little bit easier than they do on something like this. Now, what that does in terms of influencing the ride is that for me, this feels a bit more blocky, a bit more firmer, definitely stable, but definitely, Hyper is in the name, but I don't really see Hyper in terms of my experience in the shoe. Now with this shoe, I feel like absolutely you're getting something that's on my side of kind of comfort in terms of, you're getting something slightly soft, but not too overly soft. You do compress a little bit more in that midsole, but there's enough kind of firmness there to make sure that there's a nice kind of smooth ride in there as well too. Now with this shoe, I felt like I could pick the pace up a little bit more. Now I'm talking kind of moderate pace. I'm not saying, kind of speed work or anything like that, but I do think if you wanted to go slightly more kind of up tempo than your kind of slow, easy paces, and for me, I found it easy to do that. In this shoe, I found it more of a chore. I found like it's quite labouring to run or try to run quick in this. Now this has got Hyper in the name. I expect it to be a shoe that potentially could run or feel like you're going to run a little bit quicker in it. That's ultimately not what I found in this shoe. And I found ultimately this shoe has felt like it can work for those slow, long, easy runs, but it can also open itself up to being a shoe that you could throw on for slightly quicker runs as well. So what I would say is outsole wise, I think you're probably going to get a little bit more life out of the one on the Cloudmonster Hyper. There's just a bit more rubber there, a bit more protection in the key areas we'd expect to see on the outsole, where the design of the outsoles are slightly different. There's definitely less rubber here on the Cloudeclipse. Now I've run a fair amount more in this shoe. I haven't seen any kind of worrying issues in terms of that wear, but I would say that this is probably going to eat up a lot more miles than this will ultimately, and leave that outsole feeling a lot better. Gripping wise, it's been fine. This is definitely probably a little bit better if you want to wander off in kind of lighter kind of trails, this would be better suited to doing that. But ultimately, I would say, yeah, these are two very kind of different cushion kind of shoes, max cushion shoes. Ones that I've had very different experiences in. One that I've definitely favoured more, which I'll get into. But it's definitely going to be a case of what you really prefer from your kind of cushion shoe. I know what I prefer. I'll get into that and what I think you should go for between these two shoes.
Verdict then, well, let's get straight to the point. As a daily trainer, the On Cloudmonster Hyper is probably overpriced. And if you're after the best value versatility, I think the Cloudeclipse is definitely the better shoe. It's almost as cushioned, it's easily as lively, and for most runs, it's on par for overall comfort. It can do everything that the Cloud Hyper does, but it does it for less. If you take money out of the equation and separate these solely on the ride performance, the On Cloudeclipse is the more nimble, punchier shoe, though you'll sacrifice some of that plush cushion comfort that you get on the On Cloudmonster Hyper. If you like stiffer, more rockered, responsive ride, then the Cloudmonster Eclipse is the shoe for you. If you want more cushioning, the Cloudmonster Hyper offers marginally more reliable road protection. You can squeeze energy out of this shoe if you land further up, engaging that PEBA wedge. But the main problem is that it's not as punchy as the price tag might suggest. And for me, that makes it much harder to recommend as the go-to daily shoe. Now, as a road ultra race shoe, the On Cloudmonster Hyper definitely has more long haul cred, and perhaps that top dollar pricing becomes less of an issue when you're looking at the usability of this for longer miles. But as a daily trainer, for me, the On Cloud Eclipse has the edge. That would be the one I'd go for overall value and versatility.
Pretty simple verdict to me here, because the Cloudeclipse is a lot cheaper and I think it does all the same kind of runs a little bit better than the Cloudmonster Hyper, which I just didn't have a very good time with running. It could be because I'm a heel striker and there's more CloudTec at the back of the shoe here, but even then, I just think it's quite a heavy shoe and a weighty shoe, and a shoe that, for the price on his asking, just doesn't do enough to really differentiate it from cheaper shoes. There are lots of much cheaper shoes I prefer running in, like less than half the price even, that I think do a better job and have more versatility and a nicer feel on the run. Cloudeclipse is a good shoe. It's a nice rockered shoe. I do like a rockered shoe. I do like On's CloudTec phase setup. I think it delivers a smooth ride and a comfortable ride, and even though it's not like a wow sensation in terms of the foam underfit, you have got a very smooth rocker, and it does mean the shoe's a little bit more enjoyable for easy runs, relaxed runs, long runs, and also I found it a bit more versatile than the Cloudmonster Hyper. So yeah, if you are dead set on buying one of these shoes, it's an easy choice for me. It'd be the Cloudeclipse. Obviously, there's lots of other options in the market. We've got lots of videos and lots of other shoes that I'd probably pick up ahead of them, but between these two, the Cloudeclipse is the one I'd get.
So my take on whether you should go for the On Cloudmonster Hyper or the On Cloudeclipse, I think it's a quite straightforward one for me here. Now, these are two very expensive, typically expensive On shoes, but if you're looking or you're sold on an On shoe, you want a kind of max cushioned style shoe for long runs, recovery runs, easy runs, but I think also a shoe that you can maybe potentially run a little bit quicker in as well. For me, it's got to be this shoe. This has been the one that I've enjoyed running in more. I mean, I haven't barely touched this since the kind of, when we've tested it, because it's just not been, it's been massively underwhelming for me. As I said, it's got hype in the name, but it doesn't really live up to that name for me whatsoever. And in terms of that ride, in terms of that feel, it's just not what I would want in a cushioned daily trainer or a cushioned shoe for recovery runs and easy runs. I think the only thing I'd probably say is if you like that kind of firmer ride, you like a lot of protection between you and the floor, and you like a bit more in terms of outsole and durability, then that's probably going to get you this. But if you want the more fun experience, something that's going to give you something a bit more lively, a bit more enjoyable, and still work for the same types of runs as this, I'd be going for this. It's a no-brainer.
So there you have it. That's our head-to-head between the On Cloudeclipse and the On Cloudmonster Hyper. We hope to help you zero in on which shoe might work best for you. If it did, we'd love it if you'd hit like, maybe subscribe, share it with other runners who you think might be in the market for shoes like this. Now, if you're interested in deeper reviews of these shoes, I'm popping those up on the channel now. Otherwise, thanks for stopping by, and we hope to see you again soon on the Run Testers. Happy running, people.